morning.
Good morning.
It's an honor to be back near home and being asked to speak for the second time in the same year. For those that were around in May from the Carterville area, I was humbled to be asked to speak at the Memorial Day ceremony in Carterville. And so I'm doubly honored to be back here again for Veterans Day. I live near Washington, D.C. now, so it's been great living so close to home for the past 2 years and being able to participate in events like this. But I'll be moving next spring, so y'all will have to find a new speaker next year. So we're here today to honor our service members and remember their sacrifice that they have made and the courage that it takes to defend honor, duty, and country. And what a great era to celebrate Veterans Day in. President George Washington said, "The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive the veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by their nation." So based on the size of this crowd, I would say that this community definitely appreciates our veterans. Let's give the organizers to the Let me start with a little bit of history. World War I officially ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919. However, the fighting actually ended about 7 months before that when the Allies in Germany put into effect an armistice on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. So for that reason, November 11th, 1918 was largely considered the end of the war to end all wars and dubbed Armistice Day. In 1926, Congress officially recognized it as the end of the war, and in 1938, it became an official holiday. Primarily, they set aside to honor veterans of World War I. But then World War II and Korea War happened, so in 1954, Congress amended the commemoration yet again by changing the word armistice to veterans, to honor all those who have served the country in war or peace, dead or alive, although it's largely intended to thank living veterans for their sacrifices. So today, we honor all of our veterans who unselfishly placed their lives on the line for our freedom. We're here to remember their achievements, their courage, and their dedication, and to say thank you. For many veterans, our nation was important enough to endure long separations from their families, miss the births of their children, freeze in sub-zero temperatures, bake in wild jungles, lose limbs, and far too often lose their lives. And as the Korean War Memorial in Washington says, to defend countries they never knew and people they never met. The service members we honor today were ordinary people until they heard the call of duty and answered it. They came from all walks of life, but they shared several fundamental qualities. They possessed courage, pride, determination, selflessness, dedication to duty, and integrity. All the qualities needed to serve a cause larger than oneself. Many of them didn't even ask to leave their homes to fight on distant battlefields. Many didn't volunteer. They didn't go to war because they loved fighting. They were called to be part of something bigger than themselves. They were ordinary people who responded in extraordinary ways in extreme times. They rose to the nation's call because they wanted to protect our country, to maintain our way of life, and it's never been more important to maintain our way of life. The 20th century showed immense progress in the spread of democracy. However, there are more and more authoritarian powers that are now banning opposition groups and minority religions, or jailing their leaders, dispensing with term limits, and tightening the screws on any independent media that remain. Meanwhile, many countries that democratized after the end of the Cold War, ended at the end of the Cold War, have regressed in the face of rampant corruption, anti-liberal populist movements, and breakdowns in the rule of law. You cannot fight a war without veterans. And while the utopian idea of a society without war is appealing, let us not forget that wars have liberated slaves, stopped genocide, and toppled terrorists. The freedom we enjoy is extremely special, and that is why we must defend it. History teaches us that security doesn't just happen. It demands effort, bravery, sacrifice, courage, and commitment. I'd like to mention a few local veterans from 3 different conflicts who possess those qualities of bravery, sacrifice, and courage. Bravery. Bravery is the ability to confront danger without any feeling of fear or intimidation. Dick Huber grew up right near here in Martin Township. Huber wanted to sign up immediately after Pearl Harbor, but initially wasn't old enough. He ultimately did join and became a P-38 fighter pilot. There is a story that while flying near the Grand Canyon, Huber's plane wouldn't fit through a section of the canyon. So in true fighter pilot fashion, he rolled the plane sideways and squeezed through the canyon without fear or intimidation. That's bravery. Sacrifice. Sacrifice is an act of giving up something valued for the sake of something else regarded as more important or worthy. Ron Fickner is an example of someone who didn't volunteer, but he answered the call anyway. He was drafted into the Army in 1967, near the peak of the Vietnam War. After training, he departed for Vietnam only 14 days after being married. As an infantryman, he was in Vietnam for a year. While in Vietnam, he missed the birth of his daughter who he didn't get to see until she was 4 months old when he came home. That's sacrifice. So I'm going to recognize our veterans at the end of my remarks, but military spouses, like Fickner's wife, have had to endure career interruptions, frequent changes of address, and a disproportionate share of parental responsibilities. The children often had to deal with changes in schools, separation from friends, and hardest of all, missed birthdays and holidays, and the uncertainty of whether or not mom or dad would live through their next combat tour. So if you are the spouse, parent, child, or sibling of a veteran, can you please stand to be recognized for your support and the sacrifices that you made? A third quality is courage. Courage is the ability to undertake an overwhelming difficulty or pain despite the imminent and unavoidable presence of fear. One more local veteran I'd like to mention is Carl Cross Jr. from Quarryville. He followed in his grandfather's footsteps, who served during World War II, by serving in the Navy from 2002 to 2006. I don't know his exact timeline, but since he entered service in 2002, there's a pretty good chance that, like Dick Huber after Pearl Harbor, was inspired by the events of September 11th that brought the United States into the war on terror. He deployed to the Persian Gulf 2 times as a damage controlman. Damage controlmen respond to fires and other ship damage, whether it be caused from combat damage or accidents. So that means when the ship's on fire and everybody else is running away from danger, men and women like Cross run towards danger, despite the imminent and unavoidable presence of fear. That's courage. So now is the time to not only honor those who have fought or are fighting for our freedom, it is also the time for each of us to take part in protecting it. President John F. Kennedy said, "As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them." The defense of freedom is not just for those in the military. Each of us shares that duty and responsibility. You don't have to join the Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard to actively defend our way of life. We can protect our freedom simply by maintaining it here in America. If we want to preserve our freedoms, we must put them into action, for example, by voting in elections. Veterans Day isn't just a day for veterans, it's a day for all Americans. It's a day to remember why they were fighting, and a day for all of us to begin our journey of protecting our freedom and the freedom of many future generations. So now, I'd like to recognize all of our veterans who are amongst us because we stand in the midst of patriots and the family and friends of those who have nobly served. I'm going to call out each conflict since World War II. If you served in or during that war, please stand to be recognized, appreciated, and thanked. Please hold your applause until the end. World War II. And so, as I said, hold your applause until the end, but I changed my mind. So let's give this guy a round of applause. Thank you for being here today. Now hold your applause until the end. The Korean War, the Vietnam War, the multinational intervention in Lebanon, the invasion of Grenada, the invasion of Panama. I guess I didn't mention the ROE. You can remain standing, or if you're able, or be seated. The Persian Gulf War, to include the Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. The U.S. intervention in the Somali Civil War. The Bosnian War. U.S. intervention in Haiti. The Kosovo War. The Global War on Terror, to include the war in Afghanistan, Operation Enduring Freedom, and operations in the Horn of Africa. The war in Iraq, to include Operation Iraqi Freedom and New Dawn. International intervention in Libya. The American intervention in Syria, Operation Inherent Resolve. And while not all veterans see war, all who served in the military have expressed a willingness to fight if called to. So if you served during the Cold War, or if you served during peacetime, please also stand. And as we honor our veterans and remember their great deeds, let us also salute those who are currently fighting for our freedom. If you're currently active duty, Guard or Reserves, please stand. So now everybody who I called, please stand again. Thank you for answering the call to duty. You have made our armed forces the most respected in the world. So thank you for honoring our veterans by attending today. God bless you and your families. God bless our troops, and God bless America.